Welcome back. We are talking with Jennifer Britton today about her book, Reconnecting Workspaces. Jennifer, there's something in the book you talk about that I think a lot of people need to know about and discuss and have some better insights into, and that is conflict. It's we may not be in the office, but conflict is still happening.
Absolutely. Conflict is one of those topics that a lot of teams, organizations in recent years have sort of swept under the rug. Culturally, that may be more, attuned to some cultures of the world, but conflict is something that is natural in any team. We know that teams that thrive actually are very diverse. And so when we're working across differences, conflict is actually inevitable. Where the challenge resides is, how do we address conflict? Do we have the skills to address conflict? Have we seen it modeled well in terms of how leaders and teams have navigated conflict in the past? And I think conflict really is an area right now where a lot of teams and organizations are struggling. It's painful. It has not been well supported, and it makes sometimes for a very toxic environment.
What are some of the causes of conflict? Because before, you could be sitting in a meeting room and not like someone's idea, or they cut you off halfway when you're saying something, or whatever the case may be, or an interruption you don't like, so you bark at them, so to speak. Now that we're all virtual and all over the place, what are some of the causes of virtual conflict?
Great question. And so I like your example, right? Let's think about it. Think about a time when you maybe were around the table and someone had an oppositional view, and you were able to say, hey, I don't agree with that. Well, how does that play out on Zoom? Can we even say, hey, I don't agree with it? Or are we muted? Or
Yeah.
we cannot respond. And that's one layer, right? Is just the different way communication styles are playing out in the virtual space. So if we want to, again, create an environment where it is that real collaborative, interactive conversation, we need to, first of all, change how we're meeting. Are people actually all seeing each other on the screen? Are people muted or unmuted? And just something as simple as that can mean that we can actually have a discourse. We can have a dialogue. And teams need to have this ability to constructively debate, right? That doesn't mean I hate your idea. It just means I have a different perspective around this. Now, in order to do that effectively, we also need to know each other. So one of the sort of themes that you and I have been touching on today is just how important it is for teams to know each other, understand their strengths, understand how people see the world, understand their role, and understand their priorities. And when people wind up working in these individual or collective silos, we start losing some of that understanding of other people's context, of who they are, etc. So relationships are key for navigating conflict. Understanding, having empathy around someone else's world, understanding and hearing about other people's context can help us actually create bridges rather than create walls. And as a professional, whether it's been in the last 18 years of this business or in my former world of work as a program manager, as someone with the United Nations, like, conflict has potential large and small. And so how do we really create these opportunities for people to develop shared experience, collective understanding? And that's on an organizational level as well as a global level. And so I think this is something that can cost people tremendously, from not just turnover, but just the whole impact conflict and unaddressed conflict or poorly addressed conflict can have on an organizational culture. We talked earlier about how important motivation is. If things aren't addressed, how does that impact people individually and collectively? Do they even want to come to the office when there is something that has been festering, rather than being addressed in an appropriate and professional way?
Well, I do want to ask you on ways that we can address conflict, and so we can dig into that a little deeper. But I wanted to ask one question beforehand because you mentioned something I thought was rather interesting. On some of these Zoom or team calls or whatever platform you're using, you mute everybody, a team leader or the meeting facilitator.
Organizer.
That could be
Yep.
anybody. Mutes everybody, and it kind of does prevent people from doing what they did in the boardroom or a meeting room where they could speak up. That in itself, I think that person might be muting everybody so that there isn't conflict. However, it prevents people from talking, which creates conflict.
Mhm.
Am I kind of thinking correctly here, or is it just me off the wall here?
Well, I'm sort of going into your last piece. So when we are not able to voice our concerns, when we are not able to raise questions, when we're not able to check our understanding, that can lead to a whole slew of misunderstandings. It can lead to a whole, escalation of issues that might have been. It's sort of like, was this a little issue that's now a mountain? It's sort of like the mountain from the molehill perspective. Because if I'm muted, if I have no way to ask a question, get clarification, all of a sudden I'm starting to make assumptions that are probably very different from someone else on my team. And going back to where we started this conversation, right? Rules and the importance of a well-performing organization is this alignment. So we need to be in dialogue, right? One-way passage of information is not a way to really activate people. It is not a way to empower people. We can only empower through conversation. And so if our meeting structures do not support, again, that collaborative culture, then there's a disconnect. And what's going to happen with disconnect? You're going to have conflict. You're going to have, people leaving. There will be impact on many, many levels. So it's not just a simple thing. It is much greater than that. And again, I think organizations, in person, hybrid, remote, everyone could benefit from looking at what are our meeting practices and processes? Are they really working? And it's not just the muting. It's even, how are we inviting input? How are we facilitating that constructive interaction between different roles and different perspectives that exist within a team?
Well, let's say now I'll ask that question. How do we address conflict? Let's say we've tried some of those things, and using you and myself as the example, we have a disagreement, a heated disagreement.
Yeah.
How does an organization or leadership address the conflict that can be created virtually?
Yeah. Well, again, I think there's many different processes and tactics, but we want to get to root cause. What is at the heart of this, whether it's a disagreement or different perspectives, right? Even how are we framing this? So you and I might have different perspectives. And as we talk about it, we might realize, what, we have different priorities. The reason we have different perspectives is because you have information that I haven't had access to. So again, are we talking to the issues versus the personalities as well? And I think in many organizations, a lot of conflict gets personalized rather than issues being identified so that not only you and I, but everyone can be looking at the issue rather than the personalities. There's a lot of research, in our short time here that, can't get into the whole body of work, but we often talk about conflict as being that puzzle to solve rather than, something else that is really raising to arms. And as we help entire teams understand the bigger picture, I think this is where context comes into play. Many times I might feel that I only have a choice to compete with you because I don't have the rest of the information. So in a very more sort of aligned way, we can help individuals navigate conflict by understanding their natural conflict style, right? Am I more apt to go and compete? Am I more apt to step back and just not even engage in a conflict? We can also help teams understand how to navigate conflict by modeling it well. Again, what I continue to see in a lot of organizations is conflict has not been modeled well in terms of resolution. There may be a lot of heat and people yell and scream, which is not appropriate and was really
Yeah.
not effective, rather than saying, wait, let's all take a pause and let's look at what is at the core of each of these two perspectives. What's similar here? What's the real issue at play? And let's look at issues in a much more rational, objective way, rather than turning this into a lot of heat. So, conflict, large and small, global and at an organizational level, has huge implications. It is really, I think, one of our greatest challenges right now on multiple levels. And it's an area that all of us can continue to work from, but we need to all be there, right? Part of the challenge of conflict is a lot of people really are so impacted by it, don't have the skills, the tools, the processes to address it, don't have the people who can help others navigate through this, because this is a very emotional, very important topic, which deals with people's livelihoods as well. And so a lot of people retreat, and that can have huge impacts, huge impacts. So, great question.
We have a minute and a half left. Can you take a quick minute with any final thought, anything you'd like to convey about or from your book?
Well, as you've seen today, a lot of topics are covered in this book. So everything from conflict to coaching, mentoring, to team meetings, working in the evolving workspace, whether we're remote, virtual, or hybrid going forward, requires an intentionality. It also requires that we all build our skill sets and continue to build our skill sets, whether we're a leader, whether we're a team member, whether we're the CEO, because the world will continue to change in ways that, like you said, are unexpected. And the only way we can really navigate that is through, ongoing learning and communication with the people that we work with. So if people are interested, again, pick up a copy of the book, 21 chapters, 21 different areas, including many we touched on today: culture, the evolution of culture, teamwork, conflict, coaching, mentoring, and projects. So with that, Alex, thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And of course, congratulations on the book. I really enjoyed it. You can see, I have a lot of stickies, or whatever you call them, tabs sticking out here with things I wanted to touch on. And we actually ran out of time, and we still had 4 questions we didn't get to today. So, but I enjoyed it nonetheless.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I love seeing books that get marked up. So read on. And thank you for hosting today's conversation.
My pleasure. And thank you for agreeing to come on and chat with me today. I really appreciate it. And everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.